The first winter I worked at Blackwood Academy, I learned that some buildings do not become haunted because people die inside them. Sometimes they become haunted because someone loved there too deeply. I was 19, then old enough to believe I understood grief, but still young enough to think loneliness was something a person could simply outgrow. Blackwood stood on a hill outside a small town in northern England, surrounded by bare trees, stone walls, and fields that turned silver whenever frost settled over them. The academy had once been a proud boarding school for the children of wealthy families, but by the time I arrived, most of its glory had faded into cracked windows, dim corridors, and portraits of forgotten headmasters watching silently from the walls. I needed money. That was the simple truth. My mother had fallen ill that autumn, and every pound I earned went toward rent, medicine, or the kind of small household bills that never stopped arriving. So when the school posted a notice asking for a night cleaner during the Christmas term, I accepted without asking many questions. The head caretaker, Mr. Donnelly, met me at the side entrance on my first evening. "You'll work from 9 until 3, he said, handing me a heavy ring of keys. "Classrooms, lower hall, chapel, corridor, and the east wing if you have time." His eyes shifted briefly toward the dark windows behind me. "You won't be alone." I thought he meant another young cleaner. Then I met Samuel. He was standing beneath the yellow light of the corridor, pushing an old cleaning cart with one crooked wheel. He must have been nearly 70, thin, and slightly bent, with white hair tucked beneath a faded wool cap. His uniform looked older than I was, but it was clean and carefully buttoned. His hands trembled when he lifted a mop, yet there was a gentleness in his face that made him seem less like a caretaker and more like someone who belonged to the building itself. "This is Ethan," Mr. Donnelly said. "He'll be helping you." Samuel looked at me, and his smile was soft. "Then we must teach him where the old floorboards complain," he said. That was the first thing I liked about him. He spoke as if the school were alive. For the first few nights, I followed Samuel through the building and learned his habits. He knew which doors stuck in damp weather, which windows rattled when the wind came from the north, and which radiators hissed loudly enough to sound like whispering. He moved slowly, but never carelessly. Every classroom was treated with respect. Every desk was wiped as though a child might sit there the next morning and notice if it had been forgotten. Most of the other staff found him strange. "He should have retired years ago," one woman told me while filling her kettle in the staff room. "But he won't leave." "Why not?" She gave a small shrug. "Samuel says someone still needs him." I thought it was just an old man's way of feeling useful. Then I saw room 214. It was on the second floor of the east wing, at the end of a corridor where the lights always seemed dimmer than anywhere else. The room was ordinary enough, at first glance: wooden desks, a blackboard stained with old chalk-tall windows looking out over the courtyard. Yet Samuel changed whenever we entered it. He became quieter, slower, almost afraid to breathe too loudly. Each night, after cleaning every desk, he stopped at one small desk by the window. He wiped it once, then again, then a third time. Always 3 times. After that, he reached into the bottom drawer of his cart and took out 3 things: a red apple, a small carton of milk, and a folded wool scarf. The scarf was pale blue, old, but carefully kept with one loose thread hanging from the edge. He placed them on the desk with the tenderness of a father tucking a blanket around a sleeping child. The first time I saw it, I tried to smile, for your granddaughter Samuel's fingers rested on the scarf. "No," he said quietly. "For my Lily." There was something in the way he said the name that made me regret asking. "Does she come here?" His eyes stayed on the empty chair. "She used to." That was all he said. After that, I never asked directly again, but I watched. Every night, Samuel brought the apple, the milk, and the scarf. Every morning, according to the day staff, the items were gone. Nobody admitted taking them. "Mr. Donnelly said Samuel probably removed them himself before leaving, though I knew that wasn't true. I often left with Samuel at 3 in the morning, and the apple was still there when we locked the door. As Christmas approached, the academy changed. Garlands were hung along the staircases. A large tree stood in the entrance hall covered in golden lights and old glass ornaments. During the day, children sang carols in the chapel. At night, after they had all gone home or returned to the dormitories, the building felt even more empty than before, as though the music had left behind a silence too large for the halls. Samuel loved Christmas, or perhaps he feared it. I could never decide which. One evening, while snow pressed against the windows, we sat in the maintenance room, drinking tea from chipped mugs. Samuel held his cup with both hands, staring at the steam. "Children make Christmas holy," he said suddenly. "Not the church." Not the candles. Children. I said nothing. He looked embarrassed, as if he had spoken too much. My Lily used to sing louder than anyone, he continued. Terrible voice, like a kettle screaming, but proud, so proud. I smiled. How old was she? Samuel's smile faded. 7. The room became very still. Outside, the wind dragged tree branches against the glass with a slow scratching sound. What happened to her, I asked, before I could stop myself. Samuel looked toward the door, toward the long corridor beyond it. I was late, he whispered. Then he stood up, took his keys, and said we should finish the east wing. That night, room 214 felt colder than usual. I noticed it the moment we entered. My breath showed faintly in the air, though the radiator was on. Samuel acted as if nothing was wrong. He cleaned the little desk by the window, placed the apple, the milk, and the scarf, then stood there longer than usual. I am here now, he whispered. The words were not meant for me. A soft sound came from the corner of the room. At first I thought it was the building settling. Then I heard it again. A child's laugh. Small, distant, almost hidden beneath the wind. I turned so quickly my shoulder struck a desk. Did you hear that? Samuel closed his eyes. For a moment, his face filled with such pain that I wished I had never spoken. Yes, he said. The lights flickered once. When they steadied, the little chair by the window had moved. Only an inch. But it had moved. I stared at it, unable to speak. Samuel slowly picked up the blue scarf and unfolded it. His hands shook harder than I had ever seen before. She gets cold, he said. Samuel. She was always cold after. That word stayed with me. I followed him out of the room, but for the rest of the shift, I could not stop looking over my shoulder. The corridor seemed longer. The portrait seemed darker. Twice I thought I heard small footsteps behind us, but each time I turned, there was nothing there. At 3 in the morning, we locked the side entrance and stepped outside into falling snow. Samuel looked up at the windows of room 214. One light was on. I was certain we had turned it off. Should we go back? I asked. He shook his head. No. Let her have the light. The next evening, I arrived early. I told myself I wanted to help more. In truth, I wanted answers. Instead of going to the maintenance room, I climbed the stairs alone and walked to room 214. The hallway was empty. The school was quiet, except for the distant hum of heating pipes. The door was locked. I used my key. Inside the room smelled faintly of chalk old wood and something sweet. Apple. The little desk by the window was empty. No milk, no scarf, no apple. But on the blackboard, written in uneven white chalk, were 5 words. Daddy was late again. My skin went cold. Behind me, somewhere in the corridor, a child began to sing a Christmas carol. Very softly, very slowly, and every note sounded as if it were coming closer. The song stopped the moment I stepped into the corridor. Not faded, not drifted away. Stopped, as if whoever had been singing had noticed me listening. I stood in the doorway of room 214 with the keys biting into my palms, staring down the long second-floor hall. The yellow lamps flickered softly above the old wooden floor. Frost clung to the window panes. Beyond them, the courtyard lay buried beneath fresh snow, pale and still beneath the winter moon. No child stood there. No footsteps. No shadow. Only silence. Yet my heart was beating so hard I could hear it in my ears. Behind me, the chalk words remained on the blackboard. Daddy was late again. I wanted to wipe them away. I wanted to run downstairs and tell Mr. Donnelly, but something kept me standing there, trapped between fear and pity. Daddy. There was no question who the word meant. Samuel. A sound came from the staircase. This time it was not singing. It was the slow turning of a key in a lock. I rushed out of the classroom and pulled the door shut, just as Samuel appeared at the end of the corridor, his old cart creaking beside him. Snow dusted the shoulders of his coat. His cheeks were red from the cold, and for a moment he looked smaller than usual, almost fragile. "You're early," he said. I tried to answer normally. I wanted to start before the storm got worse. Samuel looked at me for a long moment. Then his eyes moved past my shoulder toward room 214. The softness left his face. "You went in there." It was not a question. I swallowed. I saw something. His hand tightened around the cart handle. "What did you see?" I did not want to say it aloud. Words have a strange power in empty buildings. Once spoken, they make things more real. "Writing," I said. "On the board." Samuel closed his eyes. For a few seconds, he looked as if someone had struck him. Then he whispered, "What did it say?" I told him. The corridor seemed to grow colder around us. Samuel did not speak again for nearly a minute. When he finally opened his eyes, they were wet. "She was angry that day," he said. "Lily," he nodded. "The Christmas recital was that evening. She had practiced for weeks. She wanted me in the front row." His voice trembled. "I promised her I would be there. I waited." He looked toward the classroom door, but I stayed to finish the boiler repairs. The east wing was freezing, and the headmaster said the children couldn't rehearse in the cold. I told myself I had time. I told myself fathers are late all the time, and little girls forgive them. He gave a bitter little smile. "Little girls do forgive. That is the worst part." The lights above us hummed. What happened? Samuel reached into his coat pocket and took out a small brass key older than the rest. There was a fire. I already knew the answer before he said it, but hearing it still made my chest tighten. "In room 214, he nodded. "Not at first. It began in the supply cupboard beside the stairs. Bad wiring, old paint, dry paper decorations. By the time anyone smelled smoke, the corridor was already filling. I looked toward the stairwell. That narrow hallway suddenly felt like a throat. She was inside. Her class was waiting there before the recital. The teacher managed to get most of them out through the back stairs. Most Samuel's face broke. Lily went back for her scarf. For a while, I could only hear the wind pressing against the windows. "The blue one?" I asked. Samuel nodded. "Her mother knitted it before she died. Lily never went anywhere without it." His voice lowered until it was almost nothing. When I reached the east wing, the smoke was too thick. They held me back. I fought them. God forgive me, I fought like a madman. But by the time the fire brigade went in, he stopped. He did not need to finish. I looked at room 214 and imagined a little girl in a smoke-filled classroom clutching a blue scarf waiting for the father who had promised he would not be late. Something inside me softened and hurt at the same time. "Samuel," I said quietly, "why do you still bring those things?" He looked almost surprised by the question. "Because she might still need them. She's gone." The words came out too quickly, too cruelly. Samuel looked at me, and there was no anger in his eyes, only exhaustion. "No," he said. "She is not gone. Not all the way." That night, he would not let me clean room 214 with him. He went inside alone while I stood in the corridor listening. I heard the desk being wiped. Once, twice, 3 times. Then the soft sound of the apple placed on wood. The milk carton, the scarf. After that, silence. Then Samuel's voice. "I am here, Lily." A pause. I came as fast as I could. The door opened a few minutes later. Samuel stepped out, looking older than when he had entered. Behind him, I saw the small desk. The apple sat in the middle, the milk beside it, the blue scarf folded neatly, and on the blackboard, the words were gone. For the next several nights, the academy felt different to me. The fear did not leave, but it changed shape. It became quieter, heavier, mixed with something almost sacred. I began noticing things I had ignored, before the small handprints that appeared on dusty windows, the faint smell of smoke that sometimes drifted through the east wing the way Samuel always paused beneath the staircase as if listening for someone above. Mr. Donnelly refused to talk about the fire. When I asked him, his face hardened. "Old tragedy," he said, "best left alone." But Samuel still suffers from it. Mr. Donnelly sighed. "Some men build their own prisons. You can unlock the door for them, but they won't step out." "Did Lily really die in room 214? He looked at me sharply. "Samuel told you, yes." For a moment I thought he would scold me. Instead he rubbed his tired eyes. "Lily Carter died 22 years ago. Christmas Eve. 7 years old." The exactness of it hurt. 7 years old, not old enough to understand why promises break. Not old enough to know fathers can love you and still fail you. "There's something else," Mr. Donnelly said. I looked up. "What?" He hesitated. Samuel was dismissed after the fire. Not officially, but quietly. Everyone blamed the building, the wiring, the headmaster, the lack of safety checks. But Samuel blamed himself. A year later, he came back and begged for work. Said he couldn't sleep unless he knew the east wing was warm. Why did they let him? Because grief like that frightens people. They would rather give it a mop than look it in the face. That sentence stayed with me. That night I found Samuel in the chapel corridor polishing brass candle holders that were already clean. "Do you ever go home?" I asked. He smiled faintly. "I have a room." "That isn't what I asked." His smile faded. "No," he said. "Not really." "Why?" He looked toward the stained glass window where moonlight colored the stone floor, blue and red. "Because home is where someone waits for you." I had no answer to that. The closer we came to Christmas Eve, the stronger the strange things became. Doors opened behind us. Tiny, wet footprints appeared in the snow outside the east wing, though no child could have walked there barefoot. Once while I was mopping the lower hall, I heard a girl whisper my name from directly behind me. "Ethan." I turned so fast the mop fell from my hands. At the far end of the corridor stood a small figure in a white dress. Only for a second. A little girl, dark hair, pale face, blue scarf hanging loose around her neck. Then the lights blinked. She was gone. I did not tell Samuel. I should have. On the morning before Christmas Eve, the academy closed for the holiday. Most staff left by noon. Students were collected by parents carrying gifts and luggage. By evening, Blackwood stood almost empty beneath falling snow. Only 3 of us remained: Mr. Donnelly, Samuel, and me. At 9 o'clock, Mr. Donnelly told us the storm was worsening. "Finish the main hall and leave the east wing," he said. "No point risking old stairs tonight." Samuel's face changed. "I have to go to room 214. "Not tonight." "I have to." "Mr." Donnelly's voice softened. "Sam, please." But Samuel was already walking away, pushing his cart toward the staircase. I followed him. The east wing was freezing. Our breath rose white in front of us. Somewhere behind the walls, pipes knocked like distant footsteps. The lights flickered more violently than usual. When we reached room 214, the door was open. Samuel stopped. "I locked it," he whispered. Inside, every desk had been turned toward the small desk by the window, like an audience. The apple from the previous night lay on the floor, split open. The milk carton had tipped over, spilling a white line across the wood. The blue scarf was gone. Samuel made a sound I will never forget. Not a cry, not a gasp. A father's heart breaking in the dark. Then the blackboard began to change. At first it was only a scrape of chalk. Slow, painful. Letter by letter words appeared across the board, though no hand held the chalk. "You promised." Samuel stepped forward. "Lily." Another line appeared. "You did not come." The room smelled suddenly of smoke. My eyes began to water. The windows turned black, not with night, but with soot. "Samuel," I said, backing toward the door. "We need to leave." He did not move. A tiny voice answered from somewhere in the room. "You said you would hear me sing." Samuel covered his mouth. "I know." The desks began to tremble. The lights flickered faster. The smell of burning wood thickened until I could barely breathe. Then from the far corner of the room, a small girl stepped out of the dark. Lily. Her dress was stained gray with ash. Her hair clung to her face. Around her neck was the blue scarf. She looked at Samuel with eyes full of a pain no child should ever have carried. And in a voice barely louder than the falling snow, she said, "Daddy, why were you late?" For several seconds, no one moved. The little girl stood near the corner of room 2, 14 small and pale, beneath the trembling lights, her blue scarf hanging around her neck like a piece of winter that had never melted. Ash marked the hem of her dress. Her bare feet did not touch the floor in any way I could understand. She was there, and yet the world seemed too fragile to hold her. Samuel took one step forward, then another. "Lily," he whispered. The name left him like a prayer he had been repeating for 22 years. The room grew darker, though the lights still burned above us. Smoke curled across the ceiling, thin at first, then thicker, slipping from the walls, as if the old fire had been sleeping inside the building and had finally woken. My eyes stung. My throat tightened. I could hear children coughing somewhere far away, though no children were there. Lily looked only at Samuel. "Daddy," she said again. "Why were you late?" Samuel covered his mouth with both hands. His shoulders shook. "I was fixing the heat," he said. "I thought I had time." The girl tilted her head. "You promised." "I know." "You said you would hear me sing." "I know, my darling." Samuel's knees weakened. He gripped the nearest desk to stay upright. "I tried to come," he said. God knows I tried. They held me back. The smoke was too thick. I fought them, Lily. I fought everyone. I would have gone in. I would have burned with you if they had let me. The room answered with a low crackling sound. Not from the walls, from everywhere. The windows glowed faintly orange, not with moonlight, but with fire. I backed toward the door, my hand, searching for the handle. It was hot. Too hot. Samuel. I choked out. We need to get out. But he did not hear me. Or perhaps he had finally reached the place he had spent 2 decades trying to return to. Lily's eyes filled with tears, but the tears were black with soot. I waited, she whispered. Samuel made a sound so broken, it barely seemed human. I know. I was cold, I know. I called you. Samuel fell to his knees. I heard you every night after he said. Every night. In the halls. In the wind. In every child singing at Christmas. I heard you, Lily. I heard you, but I could never answer. The desks began to tremble harder. Chalk fell from the blackboard and shattered into white dust. Somewhere beyond the classroom, the fire alarm began to ring. Not the modern alarm. An older bell. Deep. Metallic. Distant. A bell from 22 years ago. I pulled at the door handle with both hands. It would not open. Smoke thickened around us. Then Mr. Donnelly appeared on the other side of the small window in the door. His face went pale when he saw inside. "Ethan," he shouted. His voice came muffled through the glass. He tried the handle from the corridor. Nothing. The door would not move. Samuel did not turn around. He crawled closer to Lily, as if approaching a frightened animal. "I brought your breakfast," he said through tears. "Every night. Your apple, your milk, your scarf." Lily looked down at the blue wool around her neck. "Mummy made it." "Yes. She told me it would keep me warm." Samuel nodded, crying openly now. "It should have. I should have." For the first time, Lily's expression changed. The anger did not disappear, but beneath it was something far more terrible. Confusion. The confusion of a child who had been hurt too young to understand why love had failed to save her. "Were you angry with me?" she asked. Samuel shook his head violently. "No, never. Because I went back. No, Lily. I only wanted the scarf." "I know. I thought if I had it, I wouldn't be scared." Samuel reached out one trembling hand. This time, Lily did not step away. "I was never angry with you," he said. "Not for 1 second. I was angry with myself. Every morning, every night, every Christmas. I stayed here because I thought if I waited long enough, I could be punished properly." Lily stared at him. The flames beyond the windows dimmed slightly. "You punished yourself." Samuel laughed softly, but there was no joy in it. "Yes." "Why? Because I loved you." Lily's face crumpled. "That is not love, Daddy." The room became suddenly still. Even the smoke seemed to pause. Samuel looked at her as if those 5 words had wounded him more deeply than the fire ever could. Lily stepped closer. Her bare feet left tiny black marks on the floorboards. "Love is coming home," she whispered. "Not staying where it hurt." Samuel bowed his head. "I don't know how." The little girl lifted her hand. It was so small, so terribly small. Samuel reached for it. At first, his fingers passed through hers like mist. He gasped, not from fear, but from grief. Then Lily moved closer, and somehow impossibly her hand settled into his. The moment they touched the smoke, cleared enough for me to breathe. The blackboard changed again. The words "you promised" faded slowly away. New words appeared beneath them, written in uneven chalk. "I waited because you waited." Samuel read them and began to sob, not the quiet crying of an old man. The helpless sobbing of a father who had carried his child's death until his own soul had bent beneath it. "I'm sorry," he said. "I'm so sorry, my little bird." Lily's lower lip trembled. "I sang anyway." Samuel looked up. "What I sang for you." The firelight softened. The orange glow became gold like candles in a chapel. "I knew you would be sad if I didn't," she said. Samuel pressed her hand to his cheek, though I did not know whether he could truly feel it. "I heard you tonight," he whispered. Lily nodded. "I wanted you to hear the end." Then she began to sing. It was a Christmas carol, one I had heard all my life, but never like that. Her voice was thin, imperfect, and childish. She missed notes. She rushed some words and held others too long. Yet it was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard, because Samuel listened as if every note were giving him back 1 second of the life he had lost. "Outside the door, mister." Donnelly stopped shouting. The whole building seemed to listen. When Lily finished, Samuel smiled, a real smile. The first one I had ever seen on him that did not carry sorrow behind it. "That was wonderful," he said. Lily smiled back. "You came this time." Samuel nodded. "Yes. You're not late anymore." The fire alarm stopped. The classroom door opened behind me with a soft click. Cold air rushed in from the corridor. Mr. Donnelly stumbled inside and grabbed my arm. "Ethan, come on!" But I could not move. Samuel was still kneeling before his daughter. Lily looked past him and saw me. For the first time, her eyes met mine. They were no longer filled with ash. They were the eyes of a tired child. "Thank you," she said. I did not know what for. For listening, for seeing, for bringing Samuel back to the place he had never truly left. Then Lily turned to her father. "Daddy," she whispered, "I'm not cold now." Samuel closed his eyes. His hand remained lifted, holding hers. The golden light grew brighter around them. It filled the room, washing over the desks, the blackboard, the old windows, the blue scarf, and the apple. Samuel had brought one final time. For a moment, I saw them differently, not as ghost and old man, but as father and daughter. Samuel was younger, standing tall in a dark caretaker's coat. Lily was beside him in a clean white dress, her scarf bright around her neck, one hand in his. She looked up at him with complete trust. Then the light went out. When it did, Lily was gone. Samuel remained on his knees. Mr. Donnelly rushed to him. Samuel did not answer. His face was peaceful. His hand rested over his heart. The blue scarf lay across his lap. He died before the ambulance arrived. The doctors later said it was his heart. They said the cold, the long hours, and his age had finally caught up with him. Mr. Donnelly gave a statement about smoke in the East Wing, though no fire was ever found. The investigators checked the wiring, the radiators, the old supply cupboards, and every inch of room 214. There was no explanation. No burned wood. No source of smoke. No reason for the alarm to ring. The only strange thing they found was the blackboard. It had one sentence written across it in small, careful chalk. "Tell Daddy I never blamed him." Mr. Donnelly stood in front of those words for a long time. Then he turned away and cried. Samuel's funeral was held 3 days after Christmas in the small cemetery behind St. Bartholomew's Church. Snow fell during the service. Only a few people came. Some teachers, a handful of former students, Mr. Donnelly, me. There was no family left. At least none living. Before they lowered the coffin, Mr. Donnelly placed the blue scarf on top of it. I placed a red apple beside it. I do not know why. It just felt right. After New Year, I returned to Blackwood Academy for one final shift. I told myself I needed the money, but the truth was simpler. I needed to see room 214. The East Wing was quiet when I arrived. The air no longer smelled of smoke. The corridor no longer felt cold. Even the light seemed warmer. I unlocked the classroom and stepped inside. The small desk by the window was empty. For the first time, there was no apple, no milk, no scarf. I waited for sadness to come, but instead I felt something softer. Peace, perhaps, or the shape peace leaves behind. On the desk, carved lightly into the wood, were two small initials. L.C. They had always been there, hidden beneath years of polish and dust. I ran my fingers over them and smiled. As I turned to leave, I heard a sound from the courtyard. Children singing. I went to the window. Snow was falling again, thick and silent. At the far side of the courtyard, beneath the old Christmas tree, stood Samuel. Not old, not bent, not tired. Beside him stood a little girl in a white dress and blue scarf. Lily held his hand. She looked up at him. He looked down at her. Then together they turned and walked through the falling snow until the white swallowed them completely. I never saw either of them again. Years have passed since that winter. Blackwood Academy eventually closed, and the old East Wing was converted into offices. Room 214 became a storage room, then a staff lounge, then nothing in particular. But every Christmas Eve, someone reports the same thing. A light left on in the second-floor window. A child's voice singing badly but proudly. And beside it, if you listen closely enough, the quiet laughter of an old man who finally made it home.